It's early, maybe 6 in the morning, that quiet hour before the house wakes up. You shuffle into the living room, half asleep, reaching for the light, and something stops you. There's a stalk rising from the center of your snake plant. Not a new leaf, not another blade pushing up the way they do. A stalk, tall, branching slightly at the top, hung with clusters of tiny white flowers, barely open, and the smell. This soft, sweet fragrance filling the room that you can't place at first because you've never smelled it before. Not in this house. Not from this plant. You've had this thing for 11 years. 11 years of the same dark green and yellow edges. Same corner. Same benign neglect. And now this. You stand there in the half-dark and you don't feel delighted. Not exactly. You feel like you walked into a room mid-conversation and missed the most important sentence. Here's what nobody mentions when they talk about snake plants. Sansevieria trifasciata is one of the most common houseplants on Earth, and the overwhelming majority of people who own one will never, not once in their lifetime of ownership, see it bloom. We're talking about a plant that can live 20, 30 years in a home and never produce a single flower. So when it does happen, it's not a botanical footnote. It's an event. And the question that follows you the rest of that morning isn't just why did it bloom? It's why did it bloom now, in this particular house, in this particular season for me? That question turns out to have two very serious answers. One from cultural traditions that go back centuries, one from botanical science that only got detailed in the last few decades. And here's what I couldn't stop thinking about when I started researching this. Both answers are pointing at exactly the same thing. The plant that became your snake plant, your mother-in-law's tongue, your Sansevieria, originated in West and Central Africa, where it was never considered a passive decoration. In Nigerian Yoruba tradition, the plant was associated with Ogun, the deity of iron and protection, and was deliberately cultivated near the entrances of homes, not for aesthetics, for what it was believed to sense and respond to. The tradition held that a healthy, thriving plant near your door meant the household was energetically sound, stable, protected, clear. A struggling plant was worth paying attention to, and a blooming plant, that was understood as something rarer and more significant, a sign that the household had reached a kind of settled, harmonious state. Think about that. The flower wasn't seen as random. It was seen as a response. That same thread runs through African American folk traditions in the American South, New Orleans, coastal Georgia, the Carolinas, where mother-in-law's tongue was kept in home gardens and on porches for generations. There are documented family histories, passed grandmother to mother to daughter, noting that the plant bloomed in periods of household peace, after a debt was finally cleared, after a family conflict resolved, after years of stability following years of upheaval. These weren't superstitions invented to explain away a mystery. These were multi-generational observations, real patterns noticed by real people paying close attention over entire lifetimes. And they consistently described the bloom as the plant registering something, not causing something, but responding to it. Feng Shui practitioners work with snake plants specifically for their ability to absorb what classical tradition calls sha qi, sharp, disruptive energy, and convert it. The placement matters enormously in this framework. Southeastern corners, near entryways, in spaces with high foot traffic or ambient noise. And within that tradition, blooming is interpreted as the plant signaling completion, that it has processed and transformed enough environmental disruption that it can now redirect its energy elsewhere, toward reproduction, toward the flower, like a security system that's been running quietly for years, and one day it doesn't need to work as hard anymore. Right. Stay with that image because it's actually more botanically precise than it sounds. If you're still here and you want to understand exactly how to create the conditions for this in your own home, the real actionable home plant hacks that make this possible, hit subscribe because we go this deep into what's actually happening with your plants every single week. Now let me show you why the traditions and the science converged on the same answer. Here is the botanical trigger for snake plant blooming, and it is specific. Sansevieria trifasciata blooms in response to a combination of root constriction, mild drought stress, light seasonality, and temperature variation. Dr. Leonard Perry at the University of Vermont Extension has documented this precisely. The plant needs to be pot-bound, meaning the roots have filled the container and are pressing against the edges. It needs a period of reduced watering in late fall and winter, mimicking the dry season of its native climate. It needs a drop in nighttime temperatures. Even the natural variation between a heated room and a slightly cooler window ledge can be enough. And it needs indirect light that shifts with the season, longer and lower in winter, more consistent in spring. Here's what's interesting. When all of those conditions align, something happens in the plant's physiology that is genuinely extraordinary. The mild stress, the root pressure, the reduced water, the temperature dip, signals to the plant that its environment is stable enough to risk reproduction, not threatened enough to redirect everything into survival, not so comfortable that there's no urgency, perfectly, precisely calibrated. And in response, the plant produces a flower stalk, releases its fragrance almost entirely at night. Sansevieria is pollinated by moths, and at times its scent released to the hours you're sleeping. And then the bloom lasts anywhere from a few days to 3 weeks before it's gone. That's it. And then possibly never again for years. Now connect that to what the traditions are observing. The bloom happens when the home is settled, when the household is stable, not chaotic, when routines are consistent, not disrupted, when people are, and this is interpretive, but pay attention, less stressed, moving through the home more quietly, keeping more regular schedules. Because what do regular schedules mean for your plant? Consistent watering patterns, consistent light exposure, consistent temperature. The calm home that tradition says the flower is responding to is literally, biologically, the same environment that triggers the bloom. Two entirely different frameworks of human attention, one ancestral and spiritual, one peer-reviewed and botanical, arrived at the same house, same corner, same plant, same conclusion, and nobody talks about this. The NASA Clean Air study found that Sansevieria trifasciata filters formaldehyde, benzene, and xylene from indoor air, chemicals that off-gas from furniture, flooring, and paint, most aggressively in new or recently renovated spaces. Here's a theory that some botanists and environmental researchers have been cautiously exploring. In spaces with high indoor chemical load, the plant is under genuine physiological stress, diverting energy to processing air toxins. As indoor air quality stabilizes and improves, which happens naturally over years in a home that isn't being renovated or newly furnished, the plant's energy load decreases. It can finally redirect resources toward the flower. The tradition says it blooms when the home's energy is cleared. The science says it may bloom when the air has cleared. I went in looking for a botanical explanation and came out, believing something much larger was happening. Before we wrap up, drop a comment and tell me if your snake plant has ever bloomed and what was happening in your house when it did. I keep thinking about what those patterns look like across hundreds of different homes and families. Here's what you can actually do. For light, an east-facing window is ideal. Bright, indirect morning light with a natural dimming through the afternoon. Avoid direct harsh sun and dark interior corners equally. For watering, in fall and winter, cut back dramatically. Once every 3 to 4 weeks, sometimes less. Let the soil dry completely between waterings. This is the single most important lever. Most people overwater, and overwatering is the primary reason snake plants never bloom. The mild stress signal never arrives. For pot size, resist the urge to repot into a larger container. The root constriction is not a problem to solve. It is the condition you're cultivating. A terracotta pot available at any hardware store helps regulate moisture naturally. For temperature, don't worry about this one artificially. The natural variation in most homes between day and nighttime heating is enough. Just don't move the plant to a heated closet in winter. Let it feel the season. And then, patience. Real patience. Not the week-long kind, the years-long kind. Because what you're building, through consistent light and restrained watering in a pot it's slowly outgrown, is a cumulative history of stable conditions. You're not making the plant bloom. You're creating the environment that allows it to decide it can. And here's what stays with me, even after all the research, even after understanding the CAM photosynthesis and the root pressure triggers and the moth pollination timing. You've been sharing a home with something living for years. It has been processing your air, responding to your rhythms, registering in its slow, cellular way the quality of the space you've made. The bloom isn't random. It never was. It's the plant telling you, in the only language it has, that something in your home finally got exactly right. Go look at your snake plant. Really look at it. It's been paying attention longer than you realized.